Hi everyone. So I watched the other 13 minutes of the debate between Cy Tinbergen-Kate and fsx23 that I hadn't watched previously, and I've got a few thoughts on that. The first one is a bit of a nitpick, but it's something that bothers me. I'm sure it bothers a lot of you. And that's when Cy throws in there the same way you do. You know, how do you know God exists? Well, the same way you do, or the God that you know exists. You know, this is not, if he's supposed to approach his apologetic with meekness and respect, that's not very respectful, okay? Telling other people what they know is not very respectful. And I understand it comes from the scripture, but sometimes it's best maybe kept to yourself. I don't think that's something that really pushes anybody who isn't already, as I've said in my other videos, already sort of on their way, or is one who's maybe is in the fold but is a little bit weak in their faith. But let's get to the meat of this actually. This constant attacking of the basis for knowledge by using tactics like saying, you know, how do you know you're not one of the people whose reasoning's not valid? And or getting someone to say, yeah, I use my reasoning to justify my reasoning. And then basically wanting to abandon the debate at that point. But he's not making the case that your reasoning isn't valid. So at that point you could actually continue the debate and then get down to, well, what are the sources of our reasoning and how can we sort out which one would be more reliable, more effective? Because again, as I've said in my other videos, I think knowledge is about utility, right? It's functioning through our life here, of course. But he doesn't want to go that far because, of course, once you do that, you pull the rug out from under his basis for knowledge, which is just a claim, right? So what he's got to do is he's got to say, well, if your reasoning is circular, I'm not going any farther. But he's not actually saying that your reasoning isn't valid, right? So that's really a dishonest tactic, and it's an obfuscation. It's a way of keeping you from looking under the covers, even though, you know, I'm sure he knows, most of us know what his argument is. It's a way for him to control it. And, you know, I'd heard him say on another sermon that he was giving, don't get on the atheist's train because then you're going to their destination. So in other words, you don't let someone else control the argument, you control the argument. You know, if you're seeking truth, that's not a real honest way, I don't think, to approach it, right? To say, well, we're going to make sure we control, we're going to make sure we steer, instead of just talking, right? Now, at this point, Cy says, the difference between you and me is that I can have justified true belief, whereas you can't, because I appeal to God who knows everything. He says, you know, is it true that some people's reasoning is invalid? And there exists a potential in this world for someone to live whose all of their reasoning is invalid. And how do you know you're not that person? This to me is one of those arguments like you've got a train track and there's a divider and your family or your wife is on one train track and there's 30 people on the other train track and the train's coming, you have no time to react. Which way do you throw the train? These are arguments of no utility whatsoever. These moral arguments and this argument as well, you know, there exists a potential for a person. Because unless you're asserting that he is that person, in which case it would make no sense to have a debate, so then, of course, ergo, the fact that he's having a debate or talking to him at all means that he's assuming that his reasoning is valid. The debate can continue. There's no point in postulating, could you be that person? And I understand why he's doing it, but the thing is, I'd rather be on that side of the fence than on the side of the fence of making just a baseless assertion. Really what I would do is I would say, you know, are you asserting that I am? And if you're not, then we're done with that line of reasoning. Cy shows his real colors, I think. Cy shows his true colors partway through that last 13 minutes when a phone call comes in and he says, hi brother, and there's someone on the other line and he wants to obviously let him know that he's busy, and he says, I'm on the phone right now with an atheist. He's trying to use his reasoning to justify his reasoning. I find this really, really in poor taste, and it's evidence of a character flaw, if you ask me. That character flaw is evident throughout much of his street apologetic, but this is a neat little glimpse into who he really is. It's not respectful at all. Now, maybe he doesn't respect fsx23. Okay, that's fine. But when you're doing a show like that, you got to remember that you do have an audience, right? And that really shows something to people. Wow. I guess if he just claimed to be meek and claimed to be respectful, or say as he did at one point in the debate, or whatever you want to call it, that he didn't want to be condescending, and then just proceeds to be condescending. Usually that's what that means, right? When someone says, I don't want to be condescending, but that's the condescension is about to follow, right? So as the debate or the talk continues, it devolves into this merry-go-round of Cy browbeating fsx23, saying you're using your reasoning to justify your reasoning. It's viciously circular. There's no reason that I should continue to debate with you because of this circularity of your argument. And fsx23 is trying to say, well, no, there's a couple of good points that he makes in there. They sort of get lost because Cy is now retreated to that point, right? Your viciously circular argument means I ought to just ditch. And first of all, I don't think it's viciously circular. You can see my video called The Toolbox if you want more information on that. But basically, senses, memory, and reasoning are something that actually Cy likes to mock in some of his other videos, but they're not unidimensional things, right? This is a complex cross correlation that we make with feedback from other sources, other people, feedback from our environment, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think that it's as viciously circular as Cy says. But in any case, a viciously circular reasoning argument would still trump make-believe argument, right? So he actually asks fsx23 towards the end, is the Christian God impossible? Would it be impossible for him to exist? And after a little reluctance, fsx23 says, no, it wouldn't be impossible. And he says, so you've granted me an avenue to certainty. Just chew on that for a second. The dishonesty that it takes to say that when we're talking about something being not impossible, and suddenly saying, aha, you have granted me, I'm king of the mountain, right? You think of it. So as I've said before a couple of times, this is really just an apologetic or a debate tactic of he who claims a connection to absolute knowledge first wins. And of course the apologetic is designed, finely tuned by Cy to get him there. And they have to make sure that they get there before you get to the point that fsx23 tried to get to towards the end of the video, when he actually said, you haven't just demonstrated this God, how can he reveal things to you? At which point Cy said, it's been nice talking to you. Have a nice evening. It was nice to meet you. And fsx23 couldn't pull him back. This is important. This is turf that he can't go to, right? Because this is where the apologetic falls down. Is any kind of an actual verification of the claims, because of course there aren't any. So what can be learned from all of this? Well, I would say if you're thinking about entering into a debate with Eric Hovind or Cy ten Bruggencate, I would suggest don't. Just don't. There's not really any point in trying to bring honesty into a dishonest debate, and that's really what we're talking about here. What we've got is a guy who's figured out a logic puzzle, and he's worked it out with some of his own rules that he figures he can't get out of it. And at the heart of this logic puzzle is a soft center, right? His baseless assertions. If you're going to enter into a debate, I'd go straight for the soft, chewy center. And I certainly wouldn't let him run the debate. By that I mean, he has a tendency to dominate, right? And, you can use his own words. I would certainly do some research and know what you're up against, because he said himself, don't get on the atheist train, because if you do, you're going to his destination. Well, I wouldn't go on his train either. You need to be ready I would also not enter into a debate with any of these guys with the Bible not being in play. That's just silliness, right? You can't have a debate on something when the subject matter, the source material is off limits, right? That's pointless. But I would suggest don't. Now what I would do is I would remain vigilant and counter these guys when you see them on the net. Because I think that presuppositionalists will have a tendency to be biblical literalists, and I don't think we really need a bunch of biblical literalists gaining any kind of political foothold or anything like that. I don't think they will, but I think it can be dangerous. Fundamentalism has never really been a good thing for any country when it's hit. I don't have any problem with your average Christians. Most of the people I know, quite frankly, are religious, and they're great. They're great people. They don't push it into your face, and they don't, at least to my knowledge, they don't look down on you or anything like that. They're fantastic people to deal with. They're great in the community and that sort of thing. But they're not biblical literalists. These are people who have some beliefs, but they're not out there to foist it upon other people and cram their ideas down your throat, because they also know that they don't want someone else's ideas crammed down their throat. They understand what that actually means. They understand what religious freedom is actually about. So with that said, that's it for tonight. I probably won't make another video this week. This is kind of taking it out of me for videos, and I'm still new to this anyway. So thanks for watching. Have a good evening.